the HOD, Dr. Vishankar Bhaumik, and also the Registrar Sir and Vice Principal of this, VC of this university. And finally, I would like to, welcome all the participants to, in this lecture to have a, a beautiful, session. So starting with this particular presentation, what I have to, discuss with all of you. That is basically, the topic of today's session I choose, that is cognitive failure detection of vehicle drivers using brain-computer interface. Now, why I have chosen this particular topic, because whenever I have heard that this is a kind of faculty development program on artificial intelligence and robotics, I thought of choosing a particular topic which may be given every this researcher, be there are faculties, be there are research scholars. I would like to give a flavor of what kind of approach or what kind of problem areas we can hit with, or we can deal with the flavor of this artificial intelligence. So starting with this, I would like to introduce, I'm very much thankful to Dr. Anirban Kormakar for giving us such a beautiful introduction for me. Thank you. Thank you, sir. And basically, my name is Dr. Umradha Shaha. I am associated with Netaji Subhash Engineering College under Techno India Group in Kolkata. So basically, starting with my presentation, what is basically the brain-computer interface? That first I would like to address. Now see, this is obviously, as the name suggests, we can understand that basically this is a kind of, beautiful connection or beautiful interface between brain and computer. That means if you can see this particular, figure, you can see this is a human brain, obviously. And if I receive any kind of stimulus, we generally, stimulus, we generally call it as like, any kind of signal, or any kind of, inputs, like you can see any kind of visual stream, you can hear any kind of audio signal, you can receive any kind of smell or taste, that means the olfactory stimulus, or you can receive any kind of touch perception, I mean touch or tactile kind of signals. So those signals, we are saying that these are all stimulus. So if my brain can receive any kind of stimulus, either from the computer or from laptop or from external environment, and if my brain can process those stimulus in such a manner that the brain signals can be extracted in the presence of those stimulus, and if we can process those brain signals into some means of artificial intelligence, and if we can again feed those brain signals to the computer so that we can generate some kind of what should I say, some kind of analysis based on that data, or some kind of robotic movement, or some kind of transferring those signals to any kind of automated device, then I can say that this is a brain-computer interface. There is a kind of establishment of the relationship or of the linkage between the brain and as well as the computer. So basically, that is why you can see that these are the stimulus and these are the brain responses, what we have received from the human brain. So now, if this is a brain-computer interface, then can we have an example that whether we can comment that whether this is a BCI or not? So you can see that here a particular human, a person, is basically doing some kind of job. On his laptop, right? And now if you can see that that this particular person is just doing what I am now just doing right now. That means I am using my laptop to basically to interact with all of you, right? So can you call it as a BCI? No, this is not a BCI. Why? Because the BCI usually, offers an alternative non-muscular channel of communication and control between the human brain and computer. Even if we are applying our brain signals, or even if we are incorporating or involving our brain to basically, to perform those, work right now, using our laptop or using our PC or using our this kind of machines, that doesn't mean that this is a brain computer interface, because here we are basically doing some kind of muscular communication. I'm talking about, right? I'm talking right now. So there is a kind of gesture itself. So basically that is not a BCI. So what is BCI? That means automatically there should be some kind of non-muscular communication. That means there must be a kind of non-muscular channel itself. So how can we give an example of brain computer interface? If we proceed in the next slide, then you can see that here is a human being, right? And here is a person who is taking, a sip of, tea, basically, from the cup. And you can see that the cup is basically, holded by a robotic arm, right? And what you can see here, that see from the, from the brain of this human being, basically the EEG has been extracted. What is this EEG? Let me just explain this. This is a kind of this is a full form of this EEG is electroencephalography, which is basically the means of
Okay, plus Dr. Anandar Saha, actually,
yes.
we can see your video, plus still now there is no PPT presentation, I think. So your PPT is not visible.
PPT is not visible.
Yeah.
Okay, just a moment, just a moment. Because at the very beginning,
No,
just
PPT
hold.
in my view.
I'm going to again present.
Yeah.
Going to again start my presentation. I'm going to share the whole screen. Now is it visible?
No, actually here it is visible. Your video is visible right now from my side.
Mhm. From the
So,
others as well.
so I will like to ask all the participants: is the PPT visible?
Yes,
Yes,
sir,
sir.
it is visible.
Is it
Okay, then
visible?
Yes,
okay. Then
yes,
please go
yes.
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you,
Go
sir.
ahead.
Thank you, sir. So, should I start from this slide?
No, no. It is continue. You
Okay,
continue.
okay, okay,
It's visible.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So basically, what I was just telling with you, that if we can look at this particular figure, then what can we see? We see that a person is basically taking a sip of tea from a particular cup, and cup is holded by a robotic arm. So basically, what happens that this particularly there is no such muscular communication. That means the person is not holding the cup himself, right? So basically what he is doing right now, his brain is now basically working. His brain is working, and his brain is just thinking that to basically to find out a means, so that that means can help him with a cup of tea. And whenever the brain of this human person is starting behaving like this manner, then the brain signals can be recorded by the electroencephalography, that is the EEG signals. In short, that is EEG. So this EEG signals, still being this EEG signal, since this is a very feeble, in this manner, that means it is an order of few microvolt basically. So this EEG signals, can be captured through this electroencephalography device which basically which can be implanted, in the non-invasive manner on the, scalp of a human person. And that EEG signal, can be amplified by using this EEG amplifier. And whatever be the EEG signal that is basically extracted, those signals can be processed using some signal processing techniques. And obviously, we can, identify the intention of the person, that is the intention to get a cup of tea. And if that particular intention, that means the features inside this brain signals, if those features can be extracted, which basically, you know identifies, or which basically, giving you the, the probable data of the motor intention of that person, then that, using some kind of, logic, that is using some kind of feature extraction method, using some kind of, classifier design, using some kind of, that kind of, motor control logic, you can send these signal to the PC or to the laptop. And you can see that using some kind of, robotic command, we can send again some kind of, that kind of, robotic command to this robotic arm. And now this robotic arm starts, performing. That means in the way that basically this robotic arm is now going to, hold the cup and, offer the tea to the human being. So this is what I can say, a perfect example of brain-computer interface, because it employs a technique of non-muscular communication and control. Only my brain signal is working, and depending on that brain signals, beautifully, this robotic arm is starting, behaving in this manner. That means according to my intention. So there must be lying the, the foundation of brain computer interfacing and the artificial intelligence. Now, if I go on saying about this brain computer interfacing, that then obviously we should know, we should be aware of some kind of, brain modules, right? And brain modules and the functionality. So if we can recapitulate what we have studied, in when we were very young. So basically, we have these kind of, brain lobes, right? So basically we have some frontal lobe here, then we have some kind of, motor cortex, and obviously this motor cortex and sensory cortex is just, just lying, just side by side. And after then you will have a parietal lobe, which is near about your ears. And then at the furthest point we have some occipital lobe, right? And every certain lobes or every certain brain modules, you can see that those brain modules, can be associated with certain cognitive functionalities. So basically what happens that if you can if you can see this particular slide, you can easily understand that this frontal lobe, is very much associated with executing different kinds of, functions, different kind of plannings whenever we are doing such kind of, logical, calculations, like problem solving, abilities obviously must be associated with this frontal and prefrontal somewhere, on our forehead. Those, region is very much, associated with these kind of, functionalities. Then gradually, if you move from this kind of, problem solving abilities to certain kind of motor movement, that means if you want to, speak, that means your, muscles, your facial muscles are going to be, activated. If you want to, move your hands or move your legs, that means there, in you, this kind of, motor movement is involved. So in that very case, the motor cortex, plays a major role. Then comes to the sensory cortex. That means different kinds of, sensations are there. Sensations means like the sensations, suppose it sometimes happen for with all of us that sometimes we are in hurry, and we are some kind of out of not doing a particular work in a very sensible manner, and we just wanted to open the door in a hurry, and sometimes we got hurt uh, you know um, in our fingers, in our feet, or in our fingers, and there is some kind of spiking sensation, right? Because in this chilling winter, that spiking sensations are very weird. So basically, those sensations are taken care by the sensory cortex. So this is a one small region of our brain lobes, which is basically dealing this kind of sensations, or these kind of signals, what should I say, or this kind of stimulus, what should I say. Then obviously coming to the parietal lobe, which is basically associated near our ears. So basically that is basically associated with some all the auditory signals, what we hear, what we can sense, what our the balance, how does we hold our balance. So all this, what about our the speech. So those functionalities are basically associated with this parietal lobe. And then coming to the occipital lobe, as we can remember, what we have studied in younger days, that this occipital lobe is very much associated with the vision, right? So any kind of visual signals, whether we are going to alert or not, basically this part is better handled by this occipital lobe and parietal lobe. And obviously there is some kind of temporal lobe, which is basically the associated with the memory, understanding, language. These are the situation. So basically, whenever we have understood what are the brain modules and the functionalities, then obviously we can proceed to some kind of brain rhythms. Because sometimes it may happen that a person is doing some kind of cognitive task, and whenever he is busy in doing some cognitive task, his brain is liberating a kind of brain signals within a particular frequency range. So depending on that frequency range, we can basically segregate those EEG signals. That means the brain rhythms that can be detected through EEG, those brain rhythms can be segregated into some subparts. So what are those subparts? Subparts is like a kind of delta rhythms. So delta rhythms in this kind of things, where frequency must be lying from 0 to 3 hertz, or probably we shouldn't say about zero hertz, because 0 hertz is probably denote as brain death. So it may be a kind of a little bit higher than 0 hertz, like let's say 0.5 hertz or 0.4 hertz to 3 hertz, where basically the person you know liberating this particular EEG signals or brain signals during the sleep. So basically, if you have ever heard about certain kind of research is going on the sleep stages of human person. So basically those sleep stages are basically dealing with these brain signals, which is having the frequency range of zero point 0.0 or 0.5 hertz to 3 hertz. Then coming to the theta rhythms. So theta band or theta rhythm, what can you say? So basically this theta band is having the frequency range of 4 to 7 hertz, where the person is a little bit alert, but he is not super active. So basically he is in drowsy kind of state, or can I say that he can be in a meditation state. So that is basically whenever a person is doing meditation or like that, basically he is alert, but he is not actively participating in any kind of physical work. Then the brain rhythms, which is basically liberating, that involves a frequency range of 4 to 7 hertz, which is very very low, you can see. Then now the person is starting to basically to be active, to basically participate in different kinds of, cognitive as well as physical tasks. So basically, whenever this person is involving himself in any kind of problem solving, uh, activity, in kind of, decision making activity, then alpha rhythm, which is having the frequency of 7 to 13 hertz, that will be, prevalent very much. And whenever he started, doing some motor operation, that means whenever he started performing some kind of, motor activity, some kind of running, some kind of walking, some kind of talking. So these kind of, motor actions or small movements, that is basically associated with beta rhythms, which has a certain, frequency range of 13 to 30 hertz. So you can see that the range of the frequency is also, expanding, right? Whenever we are, approaching from this delta rhythm, which is basically associated with the sleep states from what where we are right now, that is, we are associated with some kind of, cognitive as well as physical activities where so much motor actions or motor, activity is basically involved, right? So basically this is, the beta rhythm. Now the last rhythm, which is basically above, which is having the frequency range above the 30 hertz, this is called gamma rhythm. And there, some kind of, super complex cognitive task is being, performed. That means where you can say that more than two complex cognitive tasks needs to be performed, simultaneously, then the gamma rhythms can be generated, or you can say that it's the cross-modal, sensory perception. That is why what we mean about cross-modal sensory perception. That means you can have, the involvement or two or more stimulus, two or more sensory organs, and then obviously, a very complex and high level of cognitive task is going to be performed, and then, this gamma rhythm comes into the picture. So if we are now familiar with what we are usually, applying as the brain rhythms, we are taking in consideration about the brain rhythms, then obviously now we are heading to one, one very important, what should I say, important word of today's topic, which is the cognition, right? So now we are, we have reached at this particular point where we can talk about cognitive failure detection. So basically, before going to the cognitive failure, what is cognition all about? So whenever we are talking about cognition, that means cognition is nothing but a kind of, feeling which basically that means which makes a person aware, of some kind of, using some kind of, thoughts, using some kind of his sense, using some kind of his, inputs from the, the background or the environment. So a person must be aware of what is happening, around him. This is what cognition all about. So obviously you can see that the driving involves, too much cognitive, this is a very, complex cognitive task, I can say, because too much, cognitive awareness is needed while the vehicle drivers are driving the car. So basically what happens that whenever a driver is driving his or her car, basically they can be experienced, with some kind of, cognitive failures, which leads, which leads from, a small to fatal accidents. Like we can usually experience, these days whenever we open the newspaper, or we can heard about some kind of news. So these are the kind of, accidents which are really painful, so which we need to avoid. So whenever we are going to, think about avoiding this kind of, accidents, and if we are, such aware, to basically design something, some techniques or something using the artificial intelligence, which can be able to avoid this kind of accidents. We first need to analyze what are the common cognitive failures of the vehicle drivers during driving. And obviously, in association with that, simultaneously, this sense or this fear or this, this concerns, will immediately pop out, that how does these cognitive failures can be dealt with. So, if a person is driving the car, right? So, if a person is driving the car, then we can have, certain cognitive failure. Let's say an example that probably some of us is driving the car, and whenever we are driving the car, so our brain is configured in such a beautiful manner that we are usually in motion, right? We are usually in motion. That means every time we are in such a phase or such a brain state, that every time we are hoping that our traffic signal must be green, and obviously we can drive the car through the crossing. But what about whenever the traffic signal suddenly changes from green to red? So automatically there is a sudden change in driving environment, and obviously the driver should be very very alert to observe that change in you know traffic light. So if a particular driver is not able to detect this sudden and this swift change in traffic light, maybe this particular driver is having or is experiencing the visual attention failure. So this is the first failure, which we can term it as cognitive failure during driving. So this, apart from this, what are the approaches that I am coming later? So what this is first kind of cognitive failure that a driver can experience. Apart from this, let's say that the driver is alert enough, right? And the driver can uh, correctly observe the change in traffic light from green to red, but somehow he is a little bit unmindful. He is thinking simultaneously while he is observing what are the changes in the dynamic environment while he is driving his car. Simultaneously, supposedly he is thinking about something work pressure in his I mean, which might occurred in the previous day in his workplace, or maybe there must be a kind of tension in the home. So he might be thinking about some kind of that kind of worried, or that kind of stress simultaneously when he is driving. So it may be happen that even if he observes the change in traffic light correctly, but he fails to plan his motor action in within a stipulated time. Because whenever we can see there is a change in traffic light from green to red, automatically we need to press the brake, right? So basically, obviously, and that motor action must be conducted or must be performed within a stipulated time, right? We don't have an ample amount of time, right? Otherwise we can experience accident or some kind of violation of traffic rules, right? So basically, during that particular situation, there can be situation that even if the driver is you know alert enough visually, but he may fail to plan his correct motor planning or motor execution, that thing. So he may fail to plan those things within a stipulated time. So even if he fails to plan this particular motor action, his right motor action, obviously he cannot execute his motor action within the stipulated time, and obviously the accident will happen. So, motor planning or motor intention failure can be the second cognitive failure of a vehicle driver during driving. Coming to the third one, let's say the driver is visually alert. The driver can plan also, his motor intention, his correct motor intention that yes, I need to press brake right now. I need to press brake, right? But even if suppose, for the last 3 days, he is having every night shifts, he's not having proper food, he is not having proper sleep. So maybe there is a muscle fatigue which leads to delay in executing the perfect motor action within the stipulated time. I'm again telling you because that time is very crucial. If you can if you can realize that whenever we are talking about a real time problem, right, and obviously the driving case. So basically, if he fails to execute the correct motor intention, even if even after the observing the dynamic change, and even after planning the right motor intention, accidents may happen. So motor execution failure, or I can say the muscle failure, which is basically associated with that. So muscle failure due to fatigue, that could be the last reason of cognitive failure of any vehicle driver during the driving. So if we can detect that these are the problems, these are the cognitive problems or cognitive failures of driver while driving, then obviously it is becoming easier for us to basically find out the approaches. So what we can take consideration, or what we can take an approach to basically solve these problems, that is we can take the EEG signals, we can take the brain signals recorded using the electroencephalography device from the driver, and obviously from the correct brain lobes, where you can see that this visual attention failure is basically to basically measure whether the driver is alert or not, or it is having a kind of uh, having a kind of lack in visual alertness. Then the EEG signals can be extracted from the frontal or occipital and parietal lobe, right? When we need to identify whether the driver is going through some kind of motor planning failure or motor intention failure, then we can extract the EEG signals from parietal lobe and motor cortex, because we need to plan and we need to perform those things. Similarly, whenever we are going to find out whether the person is having any kind of motor executional failure, then we can take the EEG signals, or we can extract the EEG signals from motor cortex. And obviously, if the person or if the driver is having a kind of muscle failure due to some kind of fatigue, due to some kind of not having proper sleep or proper food, then obviously there can be a kind of provision for extracting the EMG signals, which I mean, by using some EMG sensors that can be placed both on hands and on feet, so that we can analyze the signals using these EMG sensors. So these are the problems through which we can detect whether the driver is experiencing any kind of cognitive failures or not, and these are the approaches we can take to basically deal with the right problems. So if this is so, then this can be the schematic design of identifying whether a person who is driving a car is having a kind of cognitive failure or not. Let's discuss about the schematic design. You can see here that first of all, after starting the car, after starting the journey, every hour focus or every our motto is to find out whether this particular driver is having visual attention failure or not. If it is found that yes, the driver is experiencing the visual attention failure, then the alarm 1 can be generated, right? And if it is found that the driver is not experiencing any kind of visual alertness failure, then we should move on. We should move on by checking the next, cognitive failure part. That means which is basically associated with the motor planning failure. That means whenever we can check whether the driver is having a motor planning failure or not, and if it is found that yes, the driver is experiencing the motor planning failure, that means he fails to plan the correct motor intention within the stipulated time. Obviously alarm 2 will be generated. If it is found that yes, I mean the driver is not having any kind of motor planning failure, then we should move further to basically check whether the person or the driver is experiencing any kind of motor execution failure. If yes, obviously the alarm 3 will be generated. If no, then we can continue the driving, and obviously if the driving needs to be continued, it is again coming to the start position, and we can go on go on through this loop. And if the driving doesn't need to be continued, then we should stop. But here a kind of cautionary statement arises. What is that? That is, we are taking into a consideration that if a person or a driver is experiencing the visual alertness failure, then automatically we are not going to check the motor planning failure or motor execution failure. Why? Because obviously if the person is failing at its very beginning, so automatically that is a continuous process, and that should be continued in time frame, in real time frame, when the driver needs to plan the right motor action within the stipulated time frame, or again the driver needs to perform the right motor or perform or executing the right motor actions within the time ample amount of within a stipulated amount of time. So it is basically a continuous process. So automatically, if the driver is found to be failed in the very first phase or very first part, obviously there is no such point to check the two remaining parts. Let's say the driver is found to have a kind of failure in this motor planning phase. So basically then we do not check the motor execution failure part, because obviously there is a kind of failed instances during this motor planning failure stage, or motor planning failure detection stage, I can say. So basically, if a driver fail at that particular stage, obviously he cannot be able to execute the correct motor action within the stipulated time, because he already failed it, he already missed the chance, right? So that is why here I have denoted these three failures as VAF, NPF, and NEF, which is nothing but the visual attention failure, motor planning failure, and motor execution failure. Now, if this is the schematic design, then this is a kind of, those are the signals, EEG signals or EMG signals, which we can use in this first problem. That means the problem where we can involve the cognitive failure, or we can discuss the cognitive failure of the driver. Now, the problem is visual attention failure. How can we detect? How can we deal with this, failures? How can we, incorporate some kind of, artificial intelligence or brain-computer interfacing means to basically, avoid this kind of problem, or to detect whether the driver is experiencing this particular failure or not? So basically, there lies some kind of, brain signals. Brain signals or brain rhythms are the kind of signals which are liberated or which are generated for specific cognitive task, and obviously at specific time instance. Like I have, mentioned here that to detect visual attention failure, we have to detect the evolution or evolvement of this, P300 brain signals. How? Let's talk about this. That suppose you are having a particular visual stimulus. That means, or I can say the auditory stimulus. That means some kind of, sound you can hear from the background or from the PC or from the laptop, or you can have a kind of, presentation, visual presentation, and you have occurred or you have experienced any kind of audible stimulus. So what is that all about? That means, what is that oddball? What does this mean? This means, let's say, let us imagine that we have, a PowerPoint presentation which consists of a green ball, and maybe there are, 1,000 slides of, and each having one big green ball. It is basically, every time, the slides are moving, every time one green ball, is coming on the screen. So if it is the situation, now let's assume that we have five or six, red balls. That means we have five or six slides which is having one red ball. And obviously you can see or you can sense that, out of 1,000, 5 or 6, this is a very near number, right? So this is a very, very smaller in a number. So this appears as oddball. That means it is the very, basic and very expected situation that every time you are seeing, you are looking at your monitor, then you are going to experience or you are going to see one green ball. And whenever you have this kind of situation that you are going to see one red ball, so this is the one kind of, unexpected situation, or I can say the oddball situation. So every time an oddball situation is a very rare, but it is a very significant stimulus, I can say. And this particular, example can be related to the real-time situation through driving. That means whenever we are driving, we are usually, our brain is thinking that yes, we are going to experience the, green light use, uh, you know at the point of, crossing, and obviously we can move, and we can, just cross this particular crossing. But whenever there is a sudden change from green to red light, this is a certain kind of, sudden change in dynamic environment that our brain must need to observe. Now, whenever this kind of oddball situation is appearing, or oddball stimulus is appearing, then what happens that after the onset, let's say this is the onset of the, situation. This is the onset. This is the, the situation where the driver is driving his car, and there is a situation where the traffic light changes from green to red. So basically, the audible stimulus is appearing at that particular point. Whenever this audible stimulus is appearing, then after at around 300 milliseconds, there must be a positive deflection in your brain signals if the driver is alert, visually alert. So this particular phenomenon is very much, applicable for using this, audio stimulus as well. That means a certain kind of, music is going on. Is basically, you are hearing a certain kind of soothing music, some kind of, a sharp noise in between the music. You can, if you are alert, visual. Audibly, if you are alert, then obviously you can hear, you cannot miss that particular sharp noise, and your brain must, be generating this P300, spike after, at around 300 milliseconds from the onset of that particular stimulus. So here in the driving case, this P300 can be detected, and this is used as a marker, biomarker, to basically identify whether the driver is having the visual attention failure or not. That means if the driver is not having a kind of P300 stimulus, even after the P 300 milliseconds time from the onset of the change in traffic light, then obviously the driver must be having visual attention failure. That means the driver is not visually alert. Coming to the next stage, there, to detect the motor planning failure, and some part of motor execution failure as well, there we need to identify another brain signal, which is called ERDERS. The full form of this is called event related desynchronization, followed by synchronization. That means event related desynchronization or event related synchronization. So how does this particular brain signal is going to be liberated? Suppose the person, whenever, you know, observes the sudden change in the traffic signal from green to red. So automatically, this particular person now, after observing this change, automatically, starts planning. Planning of what? Planning of pressing the brake, right? So if the execution or if the imagination is going to be started, then, and if the person or the driver is attentive enough so that he can plan this particular motor intention, the correct motor intention, or what should I say, even if the wrong motor intention, because that is basically going to be classified in the motor execution phase. If he just if he is right now the attentive, if he is now right now attentive, and if he can start his planning or his motor intention, then after at around 550 milliseconds, you can see that whenever this imagination or whenever this planning phase or correctly execution phase is going to be started, then there is a fall off. There is a fall off in the signal. That means if the signal is going to be desynchronized from the original signal, and you can see there is a fall off, and automatically after whenever this particular imagination is going to be stopped, that means whenever the driver finishes that what planning, I mean what particular motor operation he is going to be performed, then whenever he finishes this particular imagination or intention, his intention is going to be completed, then automatically you can see that if you analyze the brain signals, there must be a kind of rise in the brain signals, which basically leads to the synchronization with the original signal again. So this is the brain signals which is having a very significant and very beautiful curvature, that I can tell you that this is a event related desynchronization followed by synchronization if the person, if any person, or if the driver can plan the correct motor intention, and if he can complete the motor intention within the stipulated time period. So this particular brain signal can be detected, and this can be served as a biomarker to basically detect whether the driver is having a motor planning failure or not. And now coming to the so this is basically is applicable for the EEG signals whenever your brain part is basically involved during the motor planning phase as well as motor execution phase as well. But there we must not forget that one another aspect is involved, which is basically the muscle fatigueness. That means the muscle failure due to any kind of lack in food or lack in sleep, or like this, I mean due to some kind of fatigue. So for this we need EMG sensor, that means electromyography. That means whenever we have this kind of EMG sensors placed on our hands or on our feet. That means on our why on our hands, because we need to steer some, steer in some cases if we want to go left or go right. And obviously there is some kind of situation where we need to accelerate or we need to brake. So basically EMG sensors are going to be placed on our foot as well. So basically what we need to do is we need to think, or we need to extract that the EMG signals which is coming from the EMG sensors placed on our hand and on our feet, and we need to detect that whether we are getting this kind of EMG signals at around 1150 milliseconds or not. Then we can easily you know confirm that whether this person activates his muscle with that particular emphasis, so that the motor execution is performed, or the person is having or experiencing any kind of motor execution failure or not. Now you may talk about the timings, that this is the brain signals, right? So this is the EMG signal. So are these time signals are constant? No, this varies with a very a little bit small range. So basically that's why we need to perform these experiments in 100 or in 150 human persons, so that we can, and obviously the healthy persons, and we can have we can tabulate what are the time ranges that a particular person or particular healthy person can have to basically liberate those P300 signals, those ERDRS signals, or to activate muscle in such a manner that the person or a healthy person can liberate the EMG signal as well. So these are the you can say the average kind of time frame where we basically need to detect those brain signals or those EMG signals to detect the cognitive failures associated with the vehicle drivers during the driving. Now, so this is something we are talking about, where we can, incorporate the brain computer interfacing as well as the artificial intelligence to basically detect this P300 based visual attention failure detection, where you can see that if a driver, experiences some kind of, obstacle, and if he is alert enough, if he is alert enough, so basically then the EEG electrodes are placed on the scalp, basically, so to record the EEG signals from those brain lobe position or brain position, that is the frontal one. F stands for frontal, FP stands for prefrontal, P stands for parietal, and O stands for occipital. So coming from the EEG signals coming from all those brain lobes can be detected, and you can see that whether we are getting any kind of P300 peak after at around 300 milliseconds from the onset of the stimulus. Here is obstacle. If we do not get, then automatically you can see here that after that around 300 milliseconds we are taking some kind of milliseconds right now there also, and we need to generate one alarm which is called, we here term it as visual attention failure alarm, so that we can let the driver know that yes, you are not visually alert, so you are missing something, you know uh, or a very relatable change in the dynamic environment. So basically whenever we have detected this particular brain signals, then we can filter it, because obviously we are talking about brain signals, and brain signals, the to process brain signals is very difficult one, and obviously there must be some kind of noise every time incorporated, because as a human it is very difficult to only think about a certain thing, to only think about only one thing, to control our brain in such a manner, it's very important, it's very impossible manner. So that is why we need to filter those signals using a band pass filter by setting the frequency range as the upper cutoff frequency and lower cutoff frequency, can you see here, depending on the frequency band of the brain signals, what we have talked about, previous in previous slides, that yes, for this particular thing, the the driver is so much alert, so that he needs to be visually alert only. So automatically the filtering frequency, the passband frequency of the bandpass filter, if that is set within this 7 to 13 hertz, then also we can extract the alpha band, so that we can detect whether we are the driver are basically the in the visually alert state or not. We need to only process those occipital signals or the prefrontal signals between these passband frequencies. So this is the filtering technique, and after this, now our artificial intelligence portion comes into the picture, where we need to extract certain features when if we are dealing with the, if you are having the background of the pattern classification, or like artificial intelligence or soft computing techniques or like that, then obviously certainly you must be aware of this term that is called features. So what is the features is nothing but the features are those certain attributes which can describe that particular topic itself. Like if I say a feature about a person, which basically makes him different from another person, so automatically obviously that person must be having some specific features, right? So those are the features, and we can apply here the feature extraction techniques. There are several feature extraction techniques which are associated with this brain computer interface or EEG signal processing, where we here we have taken the adaptive autoregressive feature extraction method. This is one particular method. There are so many, because there are power spectral densities are there are discrete wavelet transform there are common spatial patterns are there are so much. There is a list of feature extraction techniques, but what is important is to identify the correct feature extraction techniques which can you know extract those significant features, which basically helps you to to detect or to confirm whether this particular driver is having visual attention failure or not. And if you can have now the feature, then automatically you can go for a simple two class classification technique. That means you can design a simple SVM classifier, support vector machines classifier, which can classify between two states, whether whether the driver is visually alert or non-alert. That means automatically you can have a set of those data which is basically coming from this EEG electrodes. If the person is alert, and obviously you should have certain pre-hand data which is coming from the EEG electrodes, if a person is not attentive. So basically, comparing between, what you are having right now from the real-time data and what you had previously in your database. So you are going to compare, and you have to train your classifier in that manner, and obviously you can have that particular classification result, that whether your driver is visually alert or non-alert. So this is something which is basically which helps you to deal with the first part, which is the visual attention failure detection part, using P300 signal. Now if you go on moving to the second part, which is nothing but the motor planning failure detection part, where you need to detect this ERD ERS signal. So by following the similar process what we have just done with the P300 based detection. That is, now we are going to take the EEG response from those brain lobes, which are basically the parietal lobes, which are basically the motor cortex lobe. And you can see that we are we are writing here some kind of, values like P3, like P4, like PZ, like C1, like C2, C3, so and so on. So basically, I am going to, tell you here that all these EEG signals, those are basically, collected from the scalp of the, human person. There, based on the EEG device, the particular location are very much fixed, and those locations are the location of the electrodes, EEG electrodes, that is made of the AgAgCl, basically, to basically collect. This is the conducting one. So we basically, just attach on the scalp of a person using some, electrolytic gel, and basically, for this particular, out of this particular, setup, this particular, driver is whatever is liberating as its brain signal, even if it is very feeble in microvolt, that is being captured, or that is being recorded from that specific electrode positions. So basically, this P3, P4, PZ, all are the electrode positions, that means the EEG electrode positions in the parietal lobe region, and 3, 5, 1, all the odd numbers are basically denoting you the location in the left hand side of our brain hub. Whereas all the even numbers like 2, 4, 6, 8, these numbers are basically, denoting you the electrode positions in the right hand side. And we know that this is a mirror image, basically. The two halves of the our brain lobes, and these are basically, mirror image. So basically, these are the electrode positions from where basically we are now collecting the EEG signals to basically detect this ERD, ERS signals. And this is some kind of, that fall off, that means the desynchronization, phase, and followed by the synchronization phase. You can see that if the person starts imagining its motor intention, and if it stops the motor intention after a certain amount of time, and we know the amount of time, right? Because we have already done so much training on so much 100 and 150, persons, that we already, take an average of that particular, time frame, that after how much time, basically, if a particular driver is visually and obviously, from the planning, from his planning side also, if he is alert enough, then automatically after how many times he can be able to, generate this ERD, ERS. If I do not found any such kind of ERD, ERS signal that is generated, from his brain, and if we can analyze those EEG signals which are constantly recorded through the EEG device, then I should generate one alarm which is called motor planning failure alarm. That means the person or the driver is detected of having some kind of, motor planning failure. So this is all about the, the scheme of the motor planning failure detection as well. And again, we can have this particular, filtering process. We need to extract some kind of feature extraction. Here we have taken the power spectral density and discrete wavelet transform feature extraction, and you can ask us that that why should you, why you are taking these specific feature extraction techniques, what is the, foundation behind that. That is basically, whatever we are going to study, that how, I mean, what are the feature extraction techniques are basically, helping us to extract these particular, EEG signals within some kind of, related to some kind of, specific cognitive task. Based on that literature and based on that experience, we are taking this kind of, feature extraction. We usually select this kind of feature extractions when we cannot have, some kind of, specific confirmation. Then we can go on, go on for a kind of, combination of different kind of feature extraction techniques. Like we can combine like PSD plus DWT, and we can, take some kind of, power spectral density alone. We can take the adaptive autoregressive parameter alone. Then we can take the clubbing the particular combination of PSD and AR like that, so that we can, our motto is to try to extract the useful, or I can say the most significant features, so that those significant features are able to classify your correct class. That means for visual alertness planning detection, our class of the classifier was only to detect whether the driver is visually alert or visually non-alert. Here in the motor planning failure detection, the class of the classifier is to detect what kind of motor planning or what kind of motor action this particular driver has planned to. So there could be, if I try to forget the particular involvement of clutch, because we have this kind of setup, we using a driving simulator, that is a Logitech driving simulator, and in that particular simulator we do not have that clutch. So basically we have only this kind of options, that to detect whether the driver has planned to accelerate, whether the driver has planned to uh, press the brake, if the driver is has planned to steer right or steer left, or some kind of steering control, or no operation. That means there is no change in dynamic environment and he should move his car in the same manner of what he is doing right now. So basically there, we have taken consideration of these four, these four kind of motor planning. So after this feature extraction, so every time we are doing this feature extraction or feature selection, our motto is to basically find out right features or significant features which can correctly classify those class, because you can see that this classification is very delicate, because you need to classify all the brain signals, and all those brain signals are coming from the similar similar, what should I say, similar brain lobes, right? Because if I plan to accelerate, that is also basically my motor planning. If I want to plan to press the brake, that is also one kind of motor planning, and that must be associated with the parietal lobe or motor cortex lobe. So for that reason, there is a kind of fear of having misclassification that arises in that particular stage. So whenever we thought about a kind of misclassification we can expect, then we should go for another step, which is called feature selection step. That means even if we have extracted all the EG features, maybe there may be some kind of features, those are kind of what should I say, kind of similar kind of trends. That means those are some kind of there are some number of features who at once try to classify acceleration, then also try to classify that has a kind of feature of having no operation as well, right? Because no operation means the moving the car, and acceleration means I need to you know I need to rise the speed of the car. So basically there may be some kind of features that has a tendency to basically point it out in more than one class, and there lies the sense of misclassification. So every time whenever we are doing with this artificial intelligence problems, every time our motto is to basically reduce the chances of misclassification. So that is why here we have incorporated another feature selection technique, which is called differential evolution based feature selection technique, which is an evolutionary process where I can select those significant features out of, I mean, from a big or from a large pool of feature set, what we have extracted using some feature extraction techniques. So I need to select those significant small set of features which has the ability to point out all these motor planning classes correctly. But still, you can see there is a kind of vagueness what I have just explained, that all the motor planning classes, you know I mean, all the signals that are associated with all the motor planning classes, all signals are liberated from a a very common, what should I say, common brain lobe, that is the parietal lobe, that is the motor cortex lobe. So that is why there is a kind of vagueness. So if we have still, there is some possibility of misclassification even after applying this particular evolutionary based feature selection technique, we go for fuzzy classification. Why fuzzy classification? Because in our soft computing techniques concept, fuzzy usually deals with those inputs which are vague in nature, which can be having a probability of pointing more than one answer. So there basically lies the beauty of the fuzzy classifier, and we here you know have incorporated the type 2 fuzzy classification, which is basically the novelty from artificial intelligence domain, that we can incorporate this particular classifier to classify brain signals during the motor planning phase of a driver. So in this manner, you can see that this is, a kind of motor planning failure detection scheme where we can have each and every classifier so that we can have some kind of, ground truths with us. Ground truth means ground truth for planning decisions. This ground truth, is pre-hand, is present, with previously. So basically this can be, this ground truth can be achieved from a co-pilot as well. That means co-pilot has initiated some kind of ground truth that yes, this is the situation where we need to press brake, we need to press acceleration, or we need to steer in the left side or steer in the right side. And obviously those are the ground truth, that means those can't be what should I say, can't be wrong, right? Also, in and as an alternative, we can place a camera as well, right? We can place a camera as well, which can capture the whole situation, whole the changes of the in the dynamic environment. And we can go for image processing or image segmentations as well, so that that can be the ground truth, because that cannot be cannot be going wrong, right? A person can be made wrong, a driver can make a wrong decision, but obviously a camera, a vision based system cannot be so much wrong, so cannot be giving you so much wrong information. But in the real time case, there must be a concern of the time frame or the time required for the image processing or image segmentation, this kind of things. So that is why we can here we at that very instant we can take this kind of ground truth, let's say by generated by the co-pilot, where basically those ground truth you know is generated by evolving by evaluating the situation, the whole situation, where this braking is required, where this acceleration is required, or where the steering is required. Fine. So this is some kind of, based on the traffic conditions, those are the ground truths which basically, coming to the planning, motor planning failure detection devices or detection decision box, I can say. Now, this is the parietal and motor cortex, features which are extracted from the parietal and motor cortex lobe from the driver's head. And whenever he is, visually alert and he is getting this kind of, motor and parietal cortex features, so then we can, easily fade these things to our interval type 2 fuzzy classifiers and fuzzy set-based neural network. And this is basically our motor planning classifier. So if that classifies, a kind of, situation that braking is required, then you can see that this braking control, this braking signal or braking control is going to the brake control required decision, box. If acceleration is required, if it is found that acceleration is required from, analysis, from the analysis of the, occipital signals and the parietal and motor cortex signals, then automatically this acceleration related signal, you can see here, it is going to the acceleration planning failure decision box. And similar thing goes for steering control, planning decision box as well. So what happened that when we have this kind of, situation, then automatically, if this two things matches, obviously we should say that there is no failure. If these two signals doesn't match, obviously we should comment that the corresponding planning failure occurs, or happens for the specific driver. So basically there I can, comment whether the braking planning failure or acceleration planning failure or steering control planning failure occurs, or the two signals are matching. So no braking failure happens, no acceleration failure happens, no steering failure happens. So if there is no such failure occurs, there is no such failure occurs, then automatically we can move to the our last segment, which is the motor execution failure detection unit. But if any kind of failure occurs, then automatically we should, you know generate the motor planning failure alarm to basically let the driver know that yes, he is experiencing the motor planning failure at this particular point of time. So after that, whenever we experience that the driver is visually alert, driver has planned his motor planning or motor intention correctly. So now there is time to prove whether the person is experiencing any kind of muscle failure due to any kind of fatigue or not. That means whether the driver can be able to execute his correct motor action within the stipulated time or not. Here you can see that this is the experimental setup where, a subject, we usually term the human person who are basically, involving themselves into this particular, experiment. We call it as a subject, right? So irrespective of, male and female. So basically the subject, is performing here. There's a driving situation using this Logitech driving simulator, you can see. And here you can see the EMG sensors are, placed in the, on the both arms and also on the feet. And obviously this is the EMG, EMG sensors are basically, connected through this EMG device. And this is the EEG device. This is the EEG device you can see in the picture. And all the EEG signals are going to be, recorded through this EEG, device. And whenever the person is, you know, is sensing there is such a kind of, situation where she needs to, brake or she needs to accelerate. And you can see here that we don't have the, option to press this clutch. So basically this is a kind of, simple situation. So if she needs to, press those acceleration or brake, so automatically EMG sensors are also placed on her feet to basically detect whether the muscle activation takes place in the, within the stipulated time frame, so that we can say that yes, she is, and she is not having the motor execution failure. And obviously simultaneously along with this EMG sensor, we have taken this, EEG signal as well from the motor cortex region to basically evaluate whether there is any kind of detection of the event-related desynchronization followed by synchronization after that, specified time limit. So whenever we have those two detection, if we have detected these two signals, then automatically we start filtering these two signals within the same time frame, and obviously we can perform some kind of feature extraction, then we can perform some kind of classification. And obviously this is again a very simple situation, not so much complex as compared to the motor intention or motor planning failure detection stage, where we just only need to confirm whether the subject is able to execute it, his correct motor actions, or not executed. So again, it is a very simple process, simple two-class classification technique. So we can use a simple support vector machines classifier, which can handle probably very good in a very good manner the two-class classification problem. So after this, basically, this is a kind of motor execution failure detection classifier acts in this manner that
Sir,
whether
Dr. Unada Saha, actually
yes,
now it is 1:25. We have 5 minutes left, and
yes, yes, I'm
can you please wrap
yes,
up by 5 minutes? Thank you.
yes, sure, sir. Sure, sir. Sure, sir. Thanks again, sir, to remind me. Yes, sir. So basically, based on this decision logic, right? Basically, decision logic that whether we have detected that there is a correct planning in braking, correct planning in acceleration, or correct planning in steering control. That correct planning has been made by the driver. Now there is this gating device. When if this gate is activated, we can feed these signal to the brake classifier, and obviously along with the motor cortex signals right now in that particular during the motor execution by the driver, so that this brake classifier, which is nothing but the support vector machine classifier, what I have just shown you in the previous slide, that is going to be detected whether brake is pressed or brake is not pressed, whether accelerator is pressed, whether accelerator is not pressed, whether steering control is done, whether steering control is not done. So basically, based on these classifiers or these classification techniques, using this artificial intelligence method, we can detect whether the driver is experiencing any kind of cognitive failure or not. So basically, this is one real time situation where what we have got in the process of the experimenting this particular problem, that is audio alarm is generated here, like in this is one particular case where the visual alertness failure alarm has been generated here, MPF alarm is generated here, and this is so estimated lead time is 628 milliseconds, where we can say that the driver, if the driver is alert enough, he can probably press the brake within this estimated lead time, because 628 milliseconds only time it is basically required. And you can have all the brain lobe images as well from the EEG device, which basically gives you a certain conclusion whether you are visually alert or visually not, and you can see that the occipital lobe is highlighted, which basically gives you the sense that yes, it is visually alert. So for motor planning action, if the motor action is correctly planned, then you can see that the parietal lobe is highlighted. If the motor action is executed, that means your motor area, motor region is basically highlighted means the red, it is going to be prominent red, and if it is found inactive, then automatically you will have a very darker blue kind of brain imaging pattern. So this is all about, this is a kind of results what I have just mentioned, that we can have this kind of EEG data, we can have this P300, we can have this features extraction, and obviously this is something I had to discuss with you, and I had to share with you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, yeah, you can do it. So, so thank you, Dr. Unada Saha, for your nice presentation. So now I will ask the participants. You can raise any question if you have.
Yes, I have. I can see one question. Like Pritam Chakraborty has asked that he is working with EMG signals and he wants to denoise. So basically, what you need to do is you need to go with a certain, filtering technique. Your filtering should be, in such a way that you need to find out what is your cutoff frequency and what is your, the sampling frequency as well for the EMG signal, because in any kind of EMG device there must be a sampling frequency is mentioned. So you need to filter those signals based on your sampling frequency so that you can get some kind of denoising um, you know uh, uh, signal as well. And obviously there you need to ensure that you must be having a little bit movement, a very less movement, because even if you move, if even if you are moving a slight, so automatically that can be incorporated, along with your useful signal. So those things, is necessary, I can see.
Okay. So any other participants? Do you have any questions?
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do have a very small query. First of all, ma'am, thank you very much for this such an enriching session, and we got to know a lot of important novel things which we might put in our future research work. Ma'am, I
You're
just wanted
welcome.
to thank you, ma'am. I just wanted to ask you, ma'am, that in a previous slide you showed that there are certain brain rhythms which were termed as delta, theta, alpha, and there were some specific frequency ranges attached to them. Now, my
Yes.
question is that these frequencies are of what? Basically, what frequencies are we measuring in these specific bands, and how are these frequencies measured?
Okay, yeah, this is the, I'm talking about the brain signals, right? So if this is a signals, so this signal, this is the signal of the EEG signal, that, or you can say the brain rhythms. Totally, for a person, for a healthy person, you can detect or you can measure, the brain signals up to 80 hertz or 100 hertz, right? So basically, what happens? So all these 80 hertz signal, this is a very, a vast range. So each device can basically, segregate these 80 hertz or these 100 hertz signals of human brain into subparts and give it a name regarding this. This is the range of frequency which we can call it as theta band. This is the range of
Okay,
frequency which is called delta band, or which is called, alpha band, like that.
okay, okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good afternoon, madam.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, this is Dr. B.S. Panda from Visakhapatnam.
Good afternoon,
Yeah,
sir.
my question is, what are the research areas, madam, in this field?
In this field, you can, if you are trying to collaborate the brain signal, brain computer interface using some this kind of, EEG device, or you can, if you can collaborate the FNIRS device, some brain imaging device, lots and lots and approaches are there. You can move, the robotic arm. You can try to control any kind of, robotic arm, or you can try to control any kind of robotic operation by using your brain signals. You can have so much ample amount of, research using the perception field, like the audio perception or like the tactile perception. If you can collaborate these EEG signals, that means what, how we can sense whenever we are going to touch any kind of, texture, using our from our brain signals. And if you can collaborate, from the tactile images, if you can incorporate any kind of tactile sensor, then this can be a multimodal, signals you can receive. And you can, process those signals to basically enrich that how your brain is perceiving those features and, those textures. So some kind of, there is some kind of, there can be an application area with the, some kind of, patients who are experiencing from schizophrenia, because they there in that particular, patients, they must be having some kind of, touch or touch sensation problem, or you can be you can be dealing with this kind of Alzheimer disease, or you can say in COVID-19 is this particular pandemic situation. If you can be able to collect the olfactory signals, right? Because in the there is a striking, very striking feature about having COVID symptoms, that you are going to lack of having the sense or taste kind of signal. So if you can measure the brain signals from using this EEG device, by giving them a kind of olfactory substances, whether you are getting some kind of smell, or some kind of taste, or some kind of this. So these can be a a good application area where you can have the reference what the healthy person can perceive or can be able to deliver to in such a in any kind of job, what a robot or what can automatic device can can be able to do.
So thank you for the question and answer session. So
Thank you so much,
any
sir.
other participants still do you have any question you can ask?
Good afternoon, ma'am. This is Dr. Rebecca from Gujarat.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Can I know the simulator name which you have used, ma'am? The
Yes,
simulator which you...
yes, for the driving simulator, I am using the Logitech driving simulator.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
you're welcome, ma'am.
So okay, Dr. Anurag Saha, for your brief and nice presentation. So
Thank you so much, sir.
we will again join with the same link at 2 p.m. and as per schedule. The next session will be of Dr. Sanjita Ghosh, Professor, Department of Information Technology, Institute of Engineering and Management, Kolkata. So I am stopping the session for now. Thank you very much to all the participants, and also many thanks to the speaker. Thank you.